Hey guys, it's Kevin with the New Warehouse podcast, and we are live again this morning here in San Antonio with Manhattan Associates at Momentum 2024, and I am going to be joined by a panel today of guests. We have Matt Dermody, who is the Director of Engineering of Enterprise Mobility at Manhattan Associates. We have Pete Allen from Agility Robotics, Director of Strategic Partnerships, and we have Adam Kline, former guest, longtime guest, actually, right? He's Senior Director of Product Management, and we're going to talk a little bit about automation and mobility within the warehouse, and we're also going to touch on, of course, exciting news, Agility, humanoid robot, and Manhattan's partnership and what that means. But I think we're going to open it up first, and we'll open it up to all of you guys here, get your thoughts on what is the current state of automation within the warehouse.
Yeah, so I'll give it a go here. Clearly we're seeing a massive uptick in automation, whether it's the style, the format of automation, or just the sheer amount of automation that's in the warehouse. If you go to any trade show, including Momentum now, you're going to see robotics, you're going to see various new styles of automation that's driving some pretty big buzz. If you just turn the clock back even as short as 5 or 6 years ago,
right.
We never had robotics displayed at our show, but starting in about 2019, ever since then we've had some AMRs. Now the Digit is here, which is pretty cool. So definitely a huge uptake, but it's all about labor augmentation, automating repetitive tasks. How can I squeeze out just a little bit more efficiency in the DC?
Absolutely. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I would concur. I mean, the dependency on labor is the biggest challenge, and the buildings, they've got to get more capacity out of them. The only way they can do that is to leverage automation. So we're seeing a rise of AMRs, ASRSs. We're seeing now human-centric or humanoid robots coming into play in the warehouses. So more and more technology giving that throughput increase, right? All being driven by the WMSs of the world to make it all organized and optimized, right? It's here now, and it's going to continue.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll talk a little bit about humanoids in a little bit. I know Pete is dying to talk about humanoids.
I'll just add that the evolution of form factors that we've seen, certainly the AMR category has been there for a while. We have had that at the show before. It kind of dominated the conversation over the past few years. But in recent years, we know as recently as the past 18 months, the rapid advances in AI, large language models are also now translating into these environments. So previously there had been breakthroughs around indoor mapping and localizing the bots that were driving a lot of the locationing and movement of AMRs. But a lot of the recent advancements we're seeing can be applied into a lot of the humanoid work that Pete and Agility is working on, where we're seeing kind of concepts around rapid retraining of a multi-purpose bot, right? Instead of deterministic coding of, move your arm into this position and grab the apple off the table, we can show them training videos or train them in much faster ways. So it's kind of one of the big breakthroughs relative to the humanoid bots and how they can be multi-purpose is our ability in the future to have rapid retraining. So we can, hey, today you're moving this box from here to here, but tomorrow you might be doing something else, and equipping the local site with the ability to train a robot as easily as they could maybe train a new worker.
Yeah, maybe easier.
Maybe easier. Yeah, I could touch on some of that a little bit later.
Yeah, but I think it's very interesting, and I mean, like you said, Matt, just having that technological evolution, right? I mean, just having things move faster, and even Adam, you mentioned, even just having it at a conference like this in person and physically, I mean, just as a testament to how far we've kind of come in that technology and advancement just in the last few years. So I'm curious, I mean, from a warehouse operations perspective, right? I mean, we're seeing a little more adoption, right? But I think even if we looked back a couple of years ago, there was still some skepticism around robotics and automation within the warehouse. So what do you think is driving, or what points are really pushing people towards adopting more of these technologies?
I'll jump on that. I mean, in my opinion, I think systems integrators have started to adopt it into their portfolio of products, right? And because systems integrators in a lot of buildings control the flow of goods through that building, they're starting to push the envelope into this because they've seen the problem. I can't get more capacity out of this building unless I jump into automation. So they're making the infrastructure changes. They're adopting the technology on their front. So they're leading a charge. Now, there are companies themselves that are early adopters that have been out there for years, the Amazons of the world and Walmarts and others. But I think now the systems integrators are starting to embrace this technology and jump into the AMRs, the ASRSs, and now with us, with Zion Solutions is our first as a systems integrator, and we'll have others. We're seeing that proliferation, I think, start to explode even more.
Interesting. You guys want to add?
Yeah, so I think maybe a couple of points here. Number one, I think that one thing that I've seen is as we've seen improvements to the technology and the hardware and so forth, what I've seen out of these various companies is more of a focus on supply chain use cases. Whereas before it was, we've got technology, it's really cool.
Yeah.
What do we do with it?
Right.
And I can't tell you how many times a robotics company would approach me and say, hey, let me show you this thing. And they're like, what do you think we could do with it? I'm like, it's not my job to tell you that, right? So that's kind of point number one. And then I'd say point number two is that it's also kind of forced us as a software vendor to make some adjustments in terms of how we take our warehouse management to market. How do we contemplate the various different styles of automation, and then how do we provide that level of orchestration across multiple? Because oftentimes it's not just one or two or three pieces of automation. There's a couple different styles of bots. There's an ASRS. There's various different things all together. You've got to have a layer that can orchestrate across all of it, including the people.
That's right. Yeah.
Just to add on to Adam's comment there about the almost more of the commercialization and productization of some of these workflows, where we've been visiting a number of robotic players over the years, including some of Pete's prior engagements. But I think about certain examples where we were provided demos in a lab environment of kind of large scale, secure picking arms that maybe have a suction cup array that could pick up different size packages, but it really hadn't been turned into any sort of product that was purchasable. It felt very much like a lab or science experiment. Those companies now are like the Boston Dynamics of the world, and we see Pickle is another example where we see trailer loading and unloading use cases where they've actually applied some level of wheels to this machine that can go into a trailer and perform unloading onto a conveyor. So now they have a commercialized product behind that wasn't necessarily available before. So to Adam's point, we are seeing finally some of the things come out of the science experiment stage and enter more of the productization stage where it's just, an actual solution people can purchase.
Interesting. Yeah. I think it's interesting that we're seeing that too. And I know, Pete, I think you mentioned that, early adopters like Amazon, Walmart, they have some cash to burn through R&D, right? So I'm curious what you guys think about right now. In terms of penetration into like the mid-market, some of the maybe smaller players, are they is their temperature warming up more to getting robotics and automation within the operation?
Yeah, I think you're seeing that across the board. And I think this goes back to my point about the systems integrators, right? They're allowing that mid-market tier companies to get into this because they can scale to their level now, right? And they've figured out how to tie all this automation together in different workflows. So they can put in just pieces like, hey, I'm going to throw in some AMRs over here, or hey, I just need an ASRS to manage the inventory and to get the goods out. And I think you also see like 3PLs, right? 3PLs are really starting to adopt all this automation into their business. GXO is a great example. They do a lot of innovative things. They're one of the first adopters with us, among others. But I think 3PLs are exploding with automation because they've got to get this e-commerce world just flowing, right? E-commerce is the biggest thing going on. They've got to keep that moving. So I think those are a couple of reasons I would look to the mid-markets really starting to adopt this technology.
Yeah, so are you guys seeing from Manhattan's perspective that more of these mid-market customers that use your WMS are looking to integrate these types of things?
For sure, and I think Pete nailed it on the head. Some of the 3PLs have actually been the pioneers of adoption.
That's right.
So I agree with that. For sure. So margin conscious, right, and just trying to squeeze every last drop out of the system. But one thing I will say, Pete, and I think you're spot on here, is you think about, how do these systems integrators like design the workflow? It can't just be, hey, I've got a cool bot, let's throw it in the warehouse and expect to get some value. You have to be really thoughtful and intentional about how you design the workflow around it. And again, that brings me back to, we have to also be very intentional about how we manage inventory flow systematically. It becomes very difficult. It can't be it can't be underscored more that you've got to have a good system in play to manage the handoffs of these different systems, or else you will lose inventory. You will get inaccuracies galore.
Sure. I would just jump on that a little bit.
Sure.
I think the biggest problem people run into with automation implementations is getting the software wrong. If you don't get the software layer to optimize, as you're talking about, Adam, the people, the automation, the flow of goods, the inventory, all the way from the inventory coming in, orders being fulfilled to out the door. If you get that wrong, you're going to have problems. So the software is key, and whoever's putting your flows together, make sure the software works.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that goes back to kind of that foundational, right? Getting that foundation ready before you dive into automation.
That's right.
You're just automating bad process, bad data, and you're just making something bad fast, right?
Because amazingly, there's a physical integration as well. We've seen examples from Agility with, I think GXO was the pilot there, where two different robotic solutions are interacting with one another. You have a Six Rivers cart that is arriving, and then an Agility digit unloading that cart and maybe taking those totes that are complete to a conveyor. So there's a physical integration to those two systems. You've got two independent robotic systems that are now collaborating with one another. And in a lot of weird ways, that problem is mostly solved, or at least the sensor technology has come.
Perception.
The perception, the awareness has come so far that it really, I hate to say that it's an easy problem to solve, but I think they were able to pull that kind of easy. But still, the software orchestration behind the scenes of helping to coordinate that work stream and that activity is still very complicated, and something that system integrators are going to have to get sharper on, and our own internal consulting as well when it comes to those things, because it's definitely an emerging concept. We talked about cobots for a few years, but now it seems that now we have robots interacting with robots. I don't know if
we
still called cobots.
Yeah, we can come up with a term for that.
Yeah,
just robots.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting, and I think it's great to see companies like Manhattan, like yourselves, adapting to that and trying to help your clients work through that and see those different things. So we mentioned a couple different types of automation and robotics here, but I think obviously, undoubtedly in the Discovery Center here, I would say the star of the show, aside from the puppies.
Definitely.
Is Digit. Actually, I locked eyes with Digit and it gave me hard eyes. But Pete, why don't you tell us a little bit about kind of just humanoid robots in general, for people maybe that are not familiar, and where are they kind of in the market right now?
Yeah, so I think the world of humanoid robots right now is white hot, right? Everybody is seeing Figure make this amazing raise in funding. We've seen videos from Optimus from Tesla. We've seen new Atlas, which from Boston Dynamics, which looks awesome. Apptronics is out there, and obviously Digit from Agility. All are taking kind of different approaches, right? But I would say realistically in the world today, Digit is the only one that is outperforming in a real warehouse environment and doing real work, right? We are, as a company, very focused on the warehouse environment, which is why we partnered with Manhattan as an example, right? They are the leader in this space from a WMS perspective, and we wanted to associate with that strategically. We want to be the leader in human-centric or humanoid robotics space for this industry, right? But if you look at the different types of humanoids, there's different characteristics, right? If I broadly look at the rest of the market, some of the names I just mentioned, they're trying to build robots that look like us. And while that might be interesting to build robotic hands, if you know PhDs who are robotic specialists in building robots, they'll tell you robotic hands to be very dexterous are years away from happening, right? So we took a different approach, and I like to call it intelligent design, but we said, hey, let's build end effectors that are auto-swappable. So let's put tools on the end of the arms instead of putting hands that will have to use tools. That's one example. The other is, if you look at our robots, the knees bend backwards versus forward. And that's again, an intentional design that says, based on physics, hey, if I've got to bend down and pick up 50-pound tote or box, one, if the knees go forward, they're getting in the way. And then I've got to worry about, how do I keep the center of gravity right in order to do it? So our knees go backwards intentionally to make it easier to grow and do things. So, if I look at the world of it, we're first, we're out there, but we're focused here. It's not clear where everybody else is going, right? It's kind of like, oh, are you going to hold apples and fold shirts, or, do dishes, make coffee, okay, great. What kind of work is that?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. And I obviously, being within the warehousing industry, I think it's great to see that you guys have kind of, put that flag in the sand, so to speak, or in the warehousing industry. I mean, with the partnership with Manhattan, with Zion Solution Groups, as you mentioned before, and showcasing and demoing at shows like Modex. I mean, I think it just shows that you guys are focused on that industry, and partnership with GXL too. So,
Kevin, can I add just a couple points there, because Pete's probably too humble to mention this, but Agility also brings domain expertise when it comes to this industry. If you look at who's working at Agility right now, outside of Pete, you've got Melanie Wise over there. These are folks that already had familiarity with the logistics and warehousing space that they are bringing to Agility. And so that kind of methodical niche focus they have on the warehouse, hey, we're not just going to be a general purpose humanoid that can do everything, and we're not going to show videos of them making an omelet every day. We're going to show videos of it doing real work in a warehouse with real practical applications. They've also taken, which I respect, a very methodical approach to each of the workflows that they're enabling. We're not going to boil the ocean and try to go straight for each picking in a complex, dense picking environment. They are starting with, they made a splash at ProMat 2 years ago now, I think, right? 2.5 years ago.
They're the star.
And they were just moving empty totes at the time. Now, a year later, I think they're moving 35-pound full totes with variable weights, and the bots can actually sense and detect the weight distribution before they pick up the tote. So in 1 year's time, we're seeing a big advancement. So if we went from 0 pounds to 35 pounds, 1 year, I don't know if Pete can promise me 70 by next year, but
we're striving for OSHA standards, right?
There we go.
We'll go to 50 pounds and do what humans are allowed to do in the warehouse.
That's great. Right, but taking a very methodical approach, building on all their lessons learned, so that we can deliver solutions to end customers that are kind of battle tested and proven, and that aren't overpromised. We're not overpromising things right now. We're taking a very kind of considerate approach to what problems can be solved, and then building on top of those as we learn new things. I think Pete might have heard of maybe a new use case you might be building, or is that still?
Oh, the pallet
TBD, one? Yeah. You allowed to share on that?
But I think it's pretty clear. First of all, thank you for the kind words. We are very focused, very methodical. We're also very honest about our capabilities. We are not portraying things that we cannot do, unlike others in the marketplace. But for 2024, we're very focused on any kind of use case for tote manipulation, right? So you've seen videos of ours, or you've seen at Modex and here on the floor. We can take totes out of flow racks. We can take totes off of AMRs. We can put them on AMRs. We can induct totes to ASRSs. We can take them out. One of the prospects here who came to us, a very large company who's super interested to work with us, said, hey, I'd love to be able to take totes that are coming out of our sorter and build a pallet. Do you think you could do that? And I said, that is absolutely on our roadmap for this year. We'd love to work with you to set up a POC to prove that we can do that. So I think coming out of the show, we might have a new customer that will be able to do some pallet building with totes. So that's great.
Yeah, absolutely good news. And I think that makes a ton of sense too. And I saw a DC recently where, they were doing that type of thing, sending totes to the store. I think that would be a great use case for sure for that. So I guess Matt or Adam, why don't you tell us a little bit about because you guys have partnered with Agility officially, I think in the last month or so that was announced. So tell us a little bit about kind of what does that partnership mean, and what does that mean for your customers too?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I've already touched on some of the kind of maybe the why, why Agility. Well, it's a wide market, as Pete has said, and we're different players, so I don't need to belabor that point, but kind of just re-emphasizing kind of the evaluation of them in terms of the personnel that's over there, in terms of the domain expertise that they bring. They're all reasons why kind of agility rose above the pack, right? They all started probably when we first learned about them at ProMat, and got re-engaged with them over the years. Once Pete went over there, he reached out, and we've been kind of discussing and talking about partnership ever since. So I think it was an easy evaluation for us. I mean, obviously it's a hot technology, want to be involved, but it also it did seem like this is legitimately mature to the point where it made sense to be involved in a partnership perspective. I'll let Adam maybe comment on what we're maybe entertaining from a integration, or what workflow we think we could help drive.
Yeah, sure. So just maybe a couple points here. Number one, like in general, like we try to stay away from picking winners and losers in these types of markets. But I will say that, like, to Matt's point, there's a lot of buzz out there. Yeah. I'm super happy to capitalize on the buzz and and join in on that to some extent. But from an integration perspective, we look at this very similar to how we look at any other type of automation. We have our embedded warehouse execution system that allows configurable connectivity. We don't have to do a whole lot of, we don't have to have a lot of conversations around, okay, we've got base connectors for this and base connectors, but it's all configuration, right? We're not writing code to go connect to Agility or the others either. So, we've done some things that have made our system very open, very collaborative with any style of automation. And we are really looking forward to getting the first one under our belt, and not too far off from here. But I did want to go back to one thing that Matt, you said, because I just want to kind of emphasize this. Such a good point when you talked about like all the different things that we see, various robot vendors doing out there, like making omelets and whatever, exactly. But like one thing that I really do appreciate about Agility, they're laser focused on a handful of use cases and doing those well. And I think that is a good testament to leadership, to the company and so forth, because I think that's how you're going to get a product that is truly implementable, scalable, and valuable in the market. So
yeah, absolutely, and I think that's such a smart way to go about it, and maybe stay away from the gimmicks a little bit and show like the actual use cases. And I think you guys have proven that through what you've done so far, and the honesty too, I think, is great on what you're looking at, what you can do now, what's realistic. And I think it would be great to see kind of that continued evolution there. So we talked a little bit about automation here, kind of some of the different types, and we focused a lot on humanoid robots. And I know, Matt, you're involved in the enterprise mobility. So let's talk a little bit about kind of how some other things within the warehouse, like maybe wearables or handheld devices, how does that kind of tie into automation now? Because I think a lot of people probably adopt those technologies first, right? And then they start to look at automation and other things. How does that all kind of tie together, and how should people be approaching that?
Sure. Yeah, it's a great question. I think I had a LinkedIn post about this recently, but as much as we are excited about humanoids and our partnerships in the robotics and automation space, we can't forget about the end user that is still in the warehouse, and that it's going to be a long time, I think, before there's any kind of significant exchange there. So we need to make sure our existing workforce is as efficient and performant and loves coming to work, and that we can provide enhanced user experience to help drive a lot of those things. So with our Active WM and Active WM solution, we promise continuous access to innovation as one of the kind of the pillars of that. And it's always updated, always versionless kind of software. But I have a bias towards the edge, towards the end user, towards end user technology enablement, and the end user of our software, of our WMS, is primarily engaging with us through some sort of mobile technology, through some sort of mobile app. The large majority of end users know Manhattan as the mobile app that they use on some sort of scanner or RF device that they have in the warehouse. So if we can innovate at the edge for them, provide enhanced user experience, additional modalities for input, combining the right input at the right time, or serving them the right data at the right time to make their life easier and more efficient, is where we have a lot of focus. And a lot of that is driving the adoption also of wearable technology that you alluded to. So Wearable technology carries the advantage of allowing kind of more frictionless workflow. If I don't have to set a device down to do my task, I can kind of keep focus at the task at hand. And that could be a wrist-mounted terminal with a screen, maybe a glove-mounted ring scanner, an emerging popular form factor there. We've got a recent vision partnership we just announced as well, so heads-up display, and then also traditional voice input and spoken interaction. So the combination of these different modalities are all coming together, and we recently actually added image capture as a new feature into our base mobile application. That's feedback we had gotten historically over time, that there was often a break in workflow. If maybe you open up a trailer and there's a spilled over pallet and damaged goods, and you needed to audit or capture that somehow, and the user would set down their device, maybe go get a supervisor who would go get a digital camera and go take a picture, and then go plug it into their computer back in some office, and then write up an email report of the context of what happened. Now we can actually insert image capture into the user's workflow. So maybe they selected a reason code of what was wrong, and they say damaged goods, for example. Then the next step that they could be prompted for is, take a picture. They take a picture, and we can assign basically metadata or associated data to that image, so there's context to it. Okay. We know this image was attached to this ASN, which was attached to this dock door that the user was working on, and this was the user that took the picture, and the user may not even have to fill any of that information out because it's context we are aware of. So now we haven't really interrupted their workflow. They didn't have to leave what they were doing. They can now just take an image, as easy as it is to scan a barcode, and now that gets uploaded to the relevant person for digestion. So adding additional modalities, enhancing that user experience, just making the life easier for the people still using all the mobile computers in the warehouses. It's a big focus area. It's a big passion area for me, constantly looking at ways to improve that for them. Many mobile applications in the consumer world today, your Ubers of the world, wouldn't exist without good user experience. You would not get in a car with strangers after being told your whole life that that's a bad idea, if it wasn't for good user experience. And so we may or may not have been, we lag behind Uber in some ways and the Airbnbs of the world, but we're catching up, making big strides now, and a lot of focus on mobile user experience, and that's driving, I think, a lot of new productivity and efficiency that wasn't maybe unlocked before.
And one of the keys there too is, in addition to a really well-defined workflow delivered on the handheld or the wearable, is this concept of high utilization that we have to drive from the software side, because the user experience, while really, really great, if you can't deliver a consistent kind of stream of work to that user, the user experience doesn't matter, and it gets frustrating and so forth. So not only do we have to consider how do we keep those users well utilized, but then we have to think about the next step in the flow, which may be a handoff to robotics, right? It could be something else. And how do we keep that super highly utilized as well? So we have to look at all those kind of pieces in the flow. Where are the bottlenecks? How do we anticipate those? And then how does the software solution ultimately optimize across all of those and keep things as seamless and uniform across the board?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's that's something I talk about a lot, is the user experience, because I think even as we look at some of the labor challenges, right? I mean, it's one challenge to get labor in the door, and then it's another challenge to keep them in the door, right? Have them not walk out. And one of those things is user experience. I mean, especially when you're in highly densely populated warehouse areas, super competitive, right? And they've had exposure to other technologies and stuff, and they know what warehouse has an easier user experience, right? What's easier work for them to do. So that user experience is paramount to be able to do all that, right? So I think it's very great that you guys are focused on that. And I'm curious, how do you look at, because I know, Pete, I heard you talking yesterday a little bit over in the Discovery Center. I know And we mentioned cobots here and collaborative robots. I know you guys are working towards being a collaborative robot. I mean, how does that experience? Because I think humans are still going to be in the warehouse for quite some time.
Sure,
right?
Absolutely.
So, I mean, how do we utilize these wearables, these different devices, and then how does that translate from a user experience now with something like a collaborative robot?
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see how it evolves, right? I think, when we talk about the humanoid type robots, right? If you look at Digit, we've tried to make Digit cute and friendly, and right, so that when users or associates in the warehouse see Digit, they're not intimidated by it or scared by it. Like some of the other humanoid robots, quite frankly, are a little scary looking. So that's one thing. It's like make these robots friendly so that when they go into these environments, you have good results, that people want to work around them, because they will become a cobot, in the next couple of years. I mean, today there's no safety regulations associated with these type of bipedal robots, so they have to be enclosed, and separated from humans just to protect people, make sure everybody's safe. But as things evolve, they'll get into that environment. And what's great about it is like we're getting positive feedback already. We did a survey with one of the customers. We did a POC with all the associates, and they were like, "This is awesome." And people were saying things like, "I see my future job where I'm like a robot technician, or I'm overseeing the robots." Like, so there's work that's being created with the adoption of these type of robots as well, which I think is exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've heard some similar things too, like where it's like, some of the workers are like, I get to go home and tell my kids that I work with robots, and now they think I'm cool.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so I think it's interesting to see kind of that collaborative nature, and I think that's certainly heading more towards the future. So I guess on that note of the future, before we wrap up here, I'm curious to get all of your perspectives on, as we look at automation within the warehouse. I mean, what do you think like the near future is looking like, and maybe more the long-term future as well? Just go down the line here.
Yeah, sure. So I mentioned sort of that uptick. I think we're in certainly an area of high buzz. I don't think we're far away at all from seeing some of these technologies that maybe looked so cutting edge a few years ago, hitting scale from a production perspective. And humanoid robots are certainly part of that, riding that wave. I think that's the next step. I mean, we go from kind of industry buzz to POC, which I think is kind of where a lot of customers are at right now, is bringing a few in, testing them out, seeing how it goes, and then next step is roll out at scale. I don't think we're far from that.
Yeah, I would agree, and I would say, and I'm going to stay strictly on kind of in the humanoid, or what we would call mobile manipulating robots, right? MMRs, because they are mobile and they manipulate goods, right? Yeah. We're taking a methodical approach of doing tote manipulation now, moving into case manipulation, teaching Digit to do multiple different use cases. So 2 to 3 years, I see Digit being a multi-purpose robot that is a cobot by that time, that with your WMS, you can say, hey, I need to change the workflow or move things around the warehouse. Today, we move people around the warehouse, right? Bottlenecks pop up here or there, and we orchestrate people to go change that work and increase the throughput in an area. Digit will be doing the same thing. We will, through our ARC software connected to Manhattan, we'll retask Digit to do different things, but you'll have a fleet of them that are multi-purpose. They could be doing totes over here, could be building pallets over here, and eventually unloading trailers over there. That's a pretty cool world to be in. And I don't think it's that far off. I think we're there in 2 or 3 years.
Oh, that's it. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Maybe a different kind of take, but I think short term, next couple of years, we will probably see some consolidation in the industry. I think if you walk the Modex floor, the ProMat floor, there's a lot of noise, right? There's technically a lot of noise with all the
machines
whirring around and fans hanging from the ceiling, but it's a lot of noise for the end customer to kind of cut through. Hey, I see a lot of AMRs that look kind of similar. How do I know which one's going to work best with my environment, my WMS? I think the eventual consolidation of some of those players and merging together will help cut through some of that. In the meantime, we're helping people navigate those waters. Hey, there's a lot out here, but let's narrow your focus to these kind of proven players that we know have longevity. This space is still, as fast as robotics and automation is moving, it still is a space that is pretty slow moving and conservative. And people want to know that what they're investing in is going to last 5 to 7 years. Even if they're buying it on a subscription type service, like a lot of the robotics players are moving to, there still is this desire for longevity in the solution. And when some of these robotic players have only been around for 2 or 3 years, it's kind of hard to know. So we look through for other signs when it comes to that, like the team that's involved and their prior successes, and help to cut through that noise for our end customer. But I do think we will see kind of further eventual consolidation of certain kind of categories. Long term, maybe more exciting things. I see kind of a vision of kind of localized fleets of on-demand humanoids or even the AMRs and other robots that are hyper-local, maybe to pockets of distribution environments. So key element of human labor right now is the flexibility. You can scale up and down on demand. You can put out, you know, a bid for more work and temp labor if you need to scale rapidly. There's no reason you can't basically apply the same concepts with humanoid robots. You just would have to have a localized fleet of them that are available on demand that can be scaled quickly. Now, the other key to humans is that they can, in theory, be rapidly trained to perform some tasks. So if you have temp workers coming in, hopefully with our advanced user experience, we're getting users up to speed quickly so that they can, you know, help fill those gaps in peak periods and labor surges. But if we also apply the same concepts to the humanoids, and we could have some sort of maybe standardized, you know, robotic SOP download. These bots are managed in the cloud already. They've got a pretty legit fleet management software. But imagine I can rent a series of humanoids that I need to scale up with, and maybe I could have them pre-programmed with my SOPs. So when they arrive, they can get straight to work, right? And they're training in some sort of virtual gym, maybe powered by one of your partners. Yeah, this is a neat concept.
I love it.
With robots that is kind of blew my mind when I kind of first learned about it. But there's this concept, I think maybe Malcolm Gladwell kind of introduced us to, about the 10,000 hours to master a particular skill. Yeah. Most professional athletes or musicians, you can go back and look, and there's kind of like a arbitrary, but you know, a break point of around 10,000 hours of repeat training of a particular skill to get mastery at it. There's been some breakthroughs recently with these robotic virtual gyms. You know, you've heard the term of probably digital twin and the metaverse, but there are real applications now where an agility digit can clone itself 10,000 times in a virtual space where all of the physics of our real world are simulated. So the same gravity, the same physics, and 10,000 agility digits in a virtual world can train on a task simultaneously and can therefore get their 10,000 hours in 1 hour, something a human would never be able to do. So imagine, and then all of that gets merged back into the same model. So this idea of being able to see, even maybe through video content, what task they need to be doing. And then they could go into a virtual gym and train it 10,000 times in 1 hour, and they come back complete masters at that skill, despite maybe never even practicing in the real world, is one of the major breakthroughs that allows for future state, you know, but without how fast things are moving, you know, future could be 1 or 2 years from now where this is, you know, commercially available. You know, no promises, but interesting how that can then enable rapid retraining in a very human-like way. You get a fleet of digits, they show up, hey, I need you to do this task, and you just show it to them. They kind of watch and they go, okay, we're going to go to our virtual gym and practice that a bunch. Okay, we're ready to go. And then they just perform that all day. And when they're done with that, maybe you could retrain them quickly to do something else. The rapid retraining is a big deal when it comes to this, because it won't be a dedicated robot to a dedicated task that you had to deterministically program. Like we've seen with robotics for a long time. Think of like a manufacturing robot that only painted one panel of a car. It was programmed specifically to do one thing over and over and over and over again. humanoids will be this concept of a kind of a rapidly retrainable multi-purpose bot. It may not be the best at painting that one panel, but it can paint the whole car and change the oil and do all sorts of things. That's what excites me, is the multi-purpose rapid retraining of this category.
Can I tie a bow on that real quick?
Sorry.
What he really just described was the journey of AI, right? If you really want to think about it. AI is the most overhyped word in a lot of industries, right? And if you think of humanoid robotics, like there's a lot of companies talking about how they're leveraging AI. What does that really mean, right? The reality is you need tons of data, real world data of a humanoid actually doing tasks to feed an AI model for the acceleration, which is really what you're saying, of new tasks to happen, right? The only robot that's out in the real world collecting this data is Agility's Digit.
Yeah.
And that is going to feed future AI models. So eventually, 2 or 3 years down the road, you can imagine using, and we've already done this in our innovation lab, you can use large language models to talk to Digit and say, Digit, I want you to go grab those 25 cases over in the corner and go build a pallet over on, pallet number 3. An example, if you go to our webpage, you go to the video page, you can see Pros, our CTO, talking to Digit and saying, hey, Digit, I'd like you to go pick up the box that's the color of Darth Maul's lightsaber and move it to pillar 3. And using ChatGPT, Digit actually does it. So that's where it's going. And I think that underscores exactly what Matt was saying, but it's the evolution of AI being trained with real world data that is going to enable this, not just the promise of AI, because that's a different thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's super interesting. I mean, the concept of the virtual gym, I say if anybody comes up with that for a human, like I will totally invest. I'll be right in there every day, no problem. But yeah, I mean, I think it's super interesting where we're heading, and I think it's really interesting too. That kind of underscores, I think, the importance of the system too behind the hardware as well, to have it all kind of come together. So very interesting stuff with all of you here. I really appreciate you joining me. Super insightful conversation. And hopefully we gave a lot of information out there to the audience, especially around the humanoid robots too, which I know people are very eager to learn more about. So I really appreciate you guys joining me here at Momentum with Manhattan Associates and Agility Robotics as well. So if you tuned in late, you can certainly watch the replay of this here on LinkedIn. We'll also be posting this to our YouTube channel and thenewrouse.com within the next week. So make sure you check it out. And if you want to see videos of Agility as well, you can check my personal page. I just posted one from the Discovery Center here yesterday. And make sure you connect with these guys on LinkedIn as well. So thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you later. All right.